Good morning, Lauren. How you doing? Welcome to Let's Talk Quality.
Good morning. How are you this morning?
Yeah, I'm very well. Joining us live from Ohio. Is that right?
Yep, that's right.
Very good. Very good. Well, thank you for joining us and then coming on the show, Lauren.
Happy to
I've
be
given
here.
you a bit of an introduction, but if you could give the listeners and viewers a very high level overview of who you are and what your role is now.
Sure. So my name is Lauren Smith. I am the Chief Quality Officer for Orca Bio. We make an allogenic T cell therapy at Orca, so really exciting time for us.
Excellent. And are you like 99% of all other quality professionals that just fell into quality, didn't choose to go into it, or are you a rare individual that actually decided I want to go into quality assurance?
Yeah, I definitely didn't say I want to go into quality, that wasn't my dream from high school or anything like that. I did kind of just fall into it, but it was a good move.
So how did you get into science initially?
Sure. So when I was in high school, my mother decided to go back to college, and she
Hmm.
actually went back and got a chemistry degree, which is a little bit odd for
Okay.
someone at her age. And so that combined with just like loving all my science classes made me want to go into science. So interestingly enough, I also love art, and my initial major was like art history for a semester,
Yeah.
and I had a professor who was we had it was actually like a practical art class where we were making statues. I'll just say they were statues, and this guy comes in and takes a piece of wood and nails a hole in it like the day our final was due, and then basically explained to the professor how it was a minimalist piece and it was about his struggle and all this BS. And basically, I was like, yeah, art's not for me. I think my science classes are the way to go. So just kind of like switched then and went into biology, and I really love science. So
Is that your artwork behind you?
it is. It is. It's my when I need to do something because I don't sit well. Uh, quiet artwork. It's just literally pinned to the wall.
So
So
you're still involved in it. You're still doing it.
yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
good. Good. And then when was your first actual? How did you end up in quality assurance?
Sure. Okay. So I originally, went to school undergrad in biology, went to grad school, thought I would, get a PhD, become a physician, something along those lines. So ended my master's with a 1 year old and just like really needed a job. So I actually started in environmental monitoring, which is, if you've ever done environmental monitoring, it gets boring really quick, but it was probably the most valuable role because it really showed me what it was like to be in a aseptic environment day after day and what are the practical issues that can arise.
Hmm.
And just from there, kind of took opportunities as they came. So I was only in the MTech for maybe just not even a year. Then went to a dock control position, which is kind of in quality. Went back to the micro lab, went to validation, and then I was director of validation at a plant in Indiana. And my boss at the time said, "Hey, you have QC background. Can you pick up QC as well?"
Hmm.
So I was like, sure, no problem. And then a few months later, hey, what about just taking quality assurance too? And just, you can just have the whole group. And so it really was kind of falling into it, but always in roles that were quality adjacent, right?
Yeah.
QC, doc control. It's kind of been my whole career.
Yeah. So, and what was your first? And sorry, which company was that when you took on? You were working in QC, and then you took on quality
When I
assurance
was
as well.
working validation, I took on quality.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was Cook, Cook
Okay. Yeah.
Pharmaca in
Yeah.
Indiana.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Fine. So, and then what was your first quality leadership role? Was that with Cook?
If you consider truly QA being the first quality leadership role, it would be with Cook. If you consider being like a lab manager in QA, then that would be back at BI in Ohio. So,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Fine.
yeah.
So, what made you like? What was it when you were transform? Like, moving for your career? Like, did you always have your sights set on becoming a quality assurance leader? Like it, from that point where you transitioned into, you were in validation, then you took on QC, then you took on
Sure.
QA. Was it a natural progression for you from there on inwards?
Yeah, it was a pretty natural progression. I found that I really like to dig in, master a topic, and then I get a little bit, I don't want to say bored, but um, as soon as, I have a team of people who are doing a great job and they don't really need me, I'm like, well, what else can I do to contribute? And I
Mm,
think just by having that orientation, it just fell into things. So a
yeah,
lot of the roles I've had, well before I actually officially had the role, I was already involved. I was already
yeah,
doing it. I was already picking up, someone else was struggling. How can I help? Not really with the intention of, oh, I want this other role, but just, want to be, I want to stay engaged and be excited about work every day. And that means, when you aren't, 100% busy finding other things to do to help others, and it just kind of naturally happened that way.
yeah, yeah. But I think it's important if you've got to constantly being felt like you're developing and
Yeah.
experiencing new things in your role.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
I
you
think
do
it's
get
really, really important
yeah.
um, to do
And
that for
then
sure.
so was Catalan your first vice president role?
It was. So
Excellent.
when I took on the quality role at the Cook site, not long after Catalan acquired Pharma.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I came to Catalan as part of that acquisition, and from there, that role turned into a site head role. That site remains the biggest site in the Catalan network, so it was a pretty easy jump from the site head role to a role that had multi-site responsibility. So,
Yeah, fine. And
yeah.
then, so you're now at Orca.
Yep.
How did that transition come around, going from Catalan to Orca?
Sure, sure. So, I mean, I loved working for Catalent. Having multiple sites. Sometimes I still miss some of that, just the pace. But I linked in with Orca's founder. Actually, we just kind of randomly met over LinkedIn
Yeah,
and started to learn a little bit more about the company. Had an opportunity to help them, just give them some advice, do some workshopping on some things that was kind of in the background, take on kind of an advisory role, and just really fell in love with the mission of the company.
okay.
So I was really close with my grandfather, and he died of cancer. And when he got to the point where he was dying, they really had no opportunity to save him. There was nothing they could do. They just kind of said, we'll make him comfortable. And he had so much life left that he wanted to keep going. And I think the product we're making here, you know, it could have changed things for him. So once I started to learn about the product, I was just all in. So
Yeah,
took a little bit of a weird turn. I'd never really, I'd really only this is really only the third company like position I've applied for ever. So I
really.
started at BI, was there for 10 years through different roles. Went to Cook when they closed the plant that I was working at in Ohio. So it was just sort of like I wasn't really looking. It just kind of forced on me then. Stayed there through an acquisition. And then this was maybe the first role I just said, hey, I just really want to do this. I just really want to do this
Yeah.
for myself, mostly because I want to see this product through to fruition. I just think it's has tremendous potential and love the people I'm working with. So,
How important is that connection to the work and the science that you're doing and the patients that you're going to help along the way when people are choosing new opportunities and
yeah,
looking at a company value proposition?
yeah,
How other than the normal factors of compensation and opportunity and things like that, what
yeah.
sort of what does that look like in your eyes?
Yeah, so for me, it's always been the most important thing. And I think that that's why I've been really happy in my career. Of
Mm,
course, you want to make more money, but I've never really paid attention to that too much, maybe at my detriment in some cases. But it's really all about, you spend so much of your life working, so much. Um, how could you not try to take the opportunity that would make you the most happy? And for me, that's how can we contribute to society? How can I
yeah,
be a I think it's our obligation as people to positively contribute to society, and being in roles that allow me to do that to a larger and larger degree has just been I feel really blessed to have that opportunity. So yeah, I mean, it's probably the most important factor for me when I'm
yeah.
looking for opportunities.
And is that something that you look for in people that you're hiring as well?
Of course. I mean, uh it's hard to tell in an interview scenario what are
Yeah,
people's real thoughts. And a lot of times you'll see individuals come in and say that they're inspired by the mission and that's why they want to come. And then you find out that maybe that's not exactly what they were thinking in the back end. But over time, I have been able to figure out ways to distinguish between new candidates and what their real motivations are. It's not just, hey, I read off a website, but what's the personal connection?
Mm,
What truly makes you want to be part of this company, this product specifically. And I find that the people who truly have an orientation towards helping others do the best in this kind of work, because it's
mm,
not easy, making some of these decisions and shaping, how will product get out, what happens when things go wrong. And if you don't have that orientation towards helping others, I find it's a little harder to make the right call. So
mm,
yeah, absolutely, one of the
yeah.
most important things I look for, even though I find sometimes it's hard to really distinguish, just because it's kind of the thing everyone says, I'm in it
Yeah.
for the job, and you have to figure out who really are and who are maybe not as authentic.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point, and like you say, it's not something that you're gonna directly ask in an interview. Is what to because people have deep personal reasons, which
Right.
like you just said. So it's an interesting. I mean, in your and then let's just talk about quality for a
Sure.
second and the sort of where we're at as an industry.
Okay.
What what are the things that when you were earlier on in your career, like what were some of the things that that made you enjoy working in quality and made you want to stay in quality, and make this your career? And then on the flip side of that, I suppose what are are there any things that frustrate you about the industry?
Sure. Yeah, so staying in quality, I mean, we've already talked a little bit about the ability to make positive change. And I don't know how you have more of a direct ability than truly in the quality roles, especially when you're in the roles where you're setting up the controls to ensure product consistently performs, right? Or you're
Mm,
releasing product. You really can get tied to those patients. The decisions I make are going to directly impact people. So I like that part of it. I like that it's always changing and it's always challenging. So,
mm,
regulations don't stay the same. There's a reason there's, like the little C and CGMP. It's whatever's current. Well, how do you find out what's current? You have to talk to people. You have to constantly be on your toes. And, as I said earlier, I sometimes can get a little bored, and that's not good for me. So quality has consistently been something that's challenging and is required that I, stay up with what's going on in the industry. And as technology's changed, the rules change a little bit. You can have more controls. You can do things that maybe are a little more efficient, but still provide the same high level of quality, true quality, product quality. And being able to just kind of stay on the forefront, not only of technology, but of just the thoughts of the regulators, has been a fun challenge for me. Like I love inspections. I love learning from the inspectors. I love seeing and hearing firsthand what the current thoughts are of the different regulatory agencies and why. And
mm.
so I just find that challenge to be, it's like a puzzle. How do you make sure you're successful and continue to improve it, and really use inspections for what they're meant to be, not for what everyone's afraid of them being. So
Do you think everyone
um,
enjoys inspections as much as you do?
I really do like it. I know. I mean, in the moment it can be stressful, but it's just. I think as long as you have the same orientation of the inspectors and you understand where they're coming from, right? We're all really doing this for the same reason. We want the product to be
Mm,
safe. And so if everyone has the same goal, maybe how you go about it isn't exactly the same, but you can use it as a learning opportunity. And, if you've done your job well, you can explain why your approach, maybe it's exactly what they're looking for, maybe it's slightly different, still meets the same end goal. And I've had challenging experiences, but also really really great experiences with inspectors, especially as I've gotten a little further in my career, control a little bit what goes on. It's been a very positive experience for me
yeah.
and hopefully my team. So yeah, I actually really like inspection. So I like the challenge. I like that it's only changing. It's always changing. I do get frustrated sometimes with, um, especially just the lack of clarity in some areas. And there have been cases where, when we're talking about inspections, I guess I'll use this as an example where, the request is just not possible or not practical. And unfortunately, some of those folks don't have the same practical experience. I'll go back way really far. I remember one time I had an interaction with an inspector where it's a media fill. You're supposed to incubate all units, right? But in the
Yeah.
specific line, if a unit was empty, it would go into like an automatic trash chute, and then it just
Okay.
like falls on other glass and breaks. And so, we're like getting an observation for not incubating all units. But we like physically can't do it. Like we would have to break the machine to get it done. And it was like a very tense, frustrating conversation. And so sometimes there is a little bit of impractical requests or things that come through our industry. And I find that a little bit frustrating. Anything that takes us away from the getting patients what they need when they need it at the absolute highest level of quality frustrates me. So
Mm.
just bureaucracy in general frustrates me. But
Yeah.
but that's
Yeah.
that's it. Otherwise, I think for the most part we all have the same goal, and so it's a great place to be.
It's being practical, isn't it? We've
Yeah,
spoken a bit about practical quality and what
that's right.
people, especially people external to the organization,
Hmm.
if they're coming in, if using consultants or whatever it may be, and that's not is that more of a mindset shift? Do you think, for people, like for example, if for people that you're bringing into your team, if they don't have the specific modality experience in cell therapy, for example, like is that a problem, for example, or do you look at more how is an individual going to contribute to the bigger picture, and that's patient safety,
Yeah,
and the mindset
yeah.
piece
I
that comes
find
with it.
that there are certain benefits to having experience in a specific modality. I mean, especially now in cell therapy, there's just a few things that aren't like don't follow traditional norms, like patient health information on labels, or just some stuff that you would be like, this is not okay, is okay in this space. And so
Mm,
it's helpful, but it's definitely not required. And I find that folks who are practical, who look to like, why are we doing this, do
mm,
really well transitioning pretty quickly. So I look
mm,
more for the personality fit to the team, the ability to problem solve, the
okay.
ability to think critically about a situation than I do about have you actually been in a specific modality. And for the most part, that's worked really, really well. I mean, there are some people who have been in the specific modality who actually can't get out of the, well, this is just what you do in this specific space. They
Mm,
can't think about, well, look, why do you do it? Like, if you
that's
don't
interesting.
understand why, then you can't make the appropriate decision. And so I'm really looking for people who are constantly questioning, constantly learning, than I am necessarily individuals who are focused on a specific technical background. I mean, I think it's a situation where you have to look at the whole picture, though,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
and
no,
what's the
definitely.
specific need at the time.
Yeah, I mean, you strike me as a very much a purpose-led individual, purpose-led leader
For sure.
in
I
what you
think I
do.
try.
Yeah, and are there any practical things that you do in your role that, I suppose, to help drive that purpose within your team?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of things. I mean, I don't ask anyone to do something unless I understand why we're doing it. I think where you can sometimes struggle is how do you allow people the autonomy to make decisions quickly in a high stakes environment, because decisions they make could impact people, and communicate that why. So I try really hard to set up a framework of decision making for staff, spend a ridiculously large amount of time explaining why we're doing what we're doing. I mean, I still have, and I did this at Catalent too, which was harder because there were so many more people. But we have monthly, if not weekly, meetings where we literally just talk about what decisions are we making and why are we making them, so everyone can understand the framework in which they're making decisions. That also allows people to have a little autonomy and grow quicker. So I'm not making decisions for everyone.
Mm,
I am giving them the tools they need to make those decisions themselves.
mm,
And I think that's probably the most practical thing. I mean, I think the most important part of all of it, though, is truly to just kind of live the values you expect others to live. So truly every day in every situation, if you're having a bad day, if maybe you're not on your game today, you still have to think about, okay, the people I'm interacting with, how am I going to treat them? How am I going to interact in this situation, regardless of what I feel like doing today? Because I need to model the values and the decision making I expect others to model. And I think that's probably the most practical thing as a leader we can do. This is especially important in quality because, like I said, our decisions they have large, there's large consequences if we make the wrong call.
Yeah, definitely. And so if I was someone coming into your team, Lauren, and um, what would I expect to learn from you as my leader? What's my sort of roadmap, and what's my development that you would offer and bring to me as an
Sure.
individual?
It depends on what role you were taking and what you wanted.
Yeah.
I found that having, especially when it comes to employee development, a roadmap or a
Mm,
specific, you know, thing that you do every single time is the wrong way to go. So
mm,
it's about what first of all, if you were coming into my team on a one-on-one basis, we would sit down and we would talk about what your goals are. What is the organizational goals? What do we need to accomplish? But what are your goals personally? Like, what is your motivation? What excites you? What will make you happy in the role? And then from there, we'd usually would sit down and kind of craft a plan on how to get there. And that could be anything from, um, if you're coming in for a job, there's certain duties you just have to do. You got to get
yeah.
your job done. But what do you do in those quiet times, in those spaces where things aren't as busy? That's really what I try to focus on. What are the projects that you're excited to do? If I have a new leader, so maybe someone who's come in and has never, or someone who's not a leader and wants to get into leadership, that's probably a better example. I've had this happen. I mean, this is probably the most common situation. I really want to get into leadership, I just haven't been able to break in. All right, well, what projects can we do to highlight your skills? And I'm not just going to then say, here, go do it. I'm going to let you fail.
Mm,
We'll break it down into steps. Okay, here are I've done projects like this. Here are all the learnings that I've had. Or maybe I find someone else that's done a similar project. Let's try to set people up for success. You don't have to take all the advice, but at least you're not going in blind. I always share tools. I see no reason for people to have to recreate the wheel if something's already been done. So I have like a large template library that I've had over the years that I, just will like pass out. Here, maybe start with this. You don't have to do it exactly this way, but really, it's just giving people the tools that I think might help them, and then listening to them. I mean, that's probably the thing that I see a lot of people miss. They're so worried about providing all this feedback and being this like perfect leader that they don't take the time to listen to what people are actually saying that
mm,
they need.
yeah.
So I always start one-on-ones or skip level meetings or whatever I'm doing with, this is about you. What do you want to talk about? Like, what's the first 15 minutes? Even if I have an agenda for someone, what's important to you right now? And really try to not think about anything I want to say. Just listen,
Mm, yeah.
absorb what they have to say,
Is
and
that
then try to be creative.
you strike me as also a very, you've got lots of processes there.
I
You
do.
mentioned you've got templates and those things that you've developed as part of your onboarding process, which I think is something that a lot of people probably don't, take for granted and don't actually implement. It kind of, you hire someone, you bring someone on in a junior role, or and it's on the job, go,
Sure.
learn as you go, firefight, and there's no real structure to their development. Um, is that something that you've sort of purposely implemented in your career? Have you learnt that yourself? How have those processes been drummed into you?
Yeah. No, I think it's been drummed into me just from either positive or negative experiences I've had myself.
Yeah.
So, you want a balance of giving people the autonomy to grow and learn on their own a little bit. So there's definitely some on the job learning. But at the same time, um, the first couple weeks, months, those are the hardest. You're learning a new
Mm,
organization, you don't know who to go to, you don't know how to be effective, and I find that a quick start makes for more engagement years later. So a quick, effective
mm,
start is really what I'm trying to give people quick wins, things that I can help highlight them in the organization.
Hmm.
And honestly, I've never really talked about this before because most of the time when I'm giving people templates or tools, I'm doing it very quietly because I just want, I mean, I want them to take credit for the end
Yeah.
product. Like it's not like, oh, here's my method and you have to follow it. It's more, how can I make this person successful as quickly as possible? And so
Hmm.
sometimes a much more structured method. Okay, here's what I need you to do in the first 90 days. We're going to walk through it. These are the meetings I'm going to have you go to, and we'll practice ahead of time to make sure you are successful. Sometimes it's just simply, someone doesn't need that. They have their own structure in their mind. So, like I said, start with listening. I'll listen to what their structure is, maybe provide a few suggestions, and I'll hold back on giving them this whole
Yeah.
structured list of things to do because they've already got it. And then I can just highlight the ability that they could come in and do it all on their own. And that's something that they get a lot of, you can tell they have a lot of pride in. So I think the most important thing is to have the tools available for those who need it, but not to be rigid in your approach as a leader. Just make sure that you are listening and trying to evaluate what people want. And look, I've screwed it up so many times, misread what people needed, been overbearing, or been less helpful than I needed to be. And so I'm just always trying to find what's the right balance for each person. And I think the older I get, the more I get it right. But I'm still learning, still
Well,
adjusting.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
you're only human, and I think
yeah,
one of the things you mentioned there, you're still learning, and I think like, but when I interview people like yourself for this show, that one thing that always comes across is the self awareness, and always wanting to work on their own weaknesses or development areas, play to their strengths, obviously, but
yeah.
everyone is very self-aware and of what they areas they need to develop in. Um, don't know if that's a trait that you've always that all good quality leaders have, but it seems that a lot of people I speak to have that trait. It's interesting, but so when you look back at your career, Lauren, as a whole, and you're still, you're still very much in the mix, and you've got some really exciting things going on at Orca. Um, I what are there any particular parts of your career, and it could even be now, but are there any particular parts where you see as right? This is or was a real pivotal time for me in terms of how what I learned about the job, the industry, the work that you're doing.
Oh yeah, there's been lots of pivotal times. I think both from a industry perspective and from a leadership perspective. I mean, the ones that jump out from an industry perspective, I've helped launch a lot of products. But was definitely involved in the very early days of the COVID vaccine launch. And so that it was just, it was very different than anything you'd done before. And so going through that experience helped me, I think, to gauge a perspective of, um, what really can you do when so many lives are on the line, and what rules maybe I didn't really question before that didn't need to happen, and then what other things were really important to make sure that you're consistently giving products. So I mean, I think that was a great kind of pivotal program to be through. It helped me learn a lot about the industry, and really just the motivations of all the people involved. From a leadership perspective, I actually think some of the most pivotal moments came really early in my career. So I had a leader one time tell me, I was basically in like a supervisory role. I had a whole bunch of people, and it was time. This is when maybe titles mattered a little more than me than they do now. Um, you know, it was time at the end of the year. I was expecting kind of be like officially put in this role because I'd been doing it for about 6 months. And the person said, he's like, oh, you're doing a great job, blah, blah, blah. But, I think you're just too young for this specific role. I was only a couple years in to my career. And, so we're going to give it to somebody else, but we want you to still do everything you've been doing. And I did it. It was fine. I didn't get upset. I mean, I was a little upset in the background, but it made me realize that it is very easy to look at someone and look at their age or their, like, even subconsciously, this was a great guy. I don't think he was trying to be mean in any way, or look at any trait about them other than their work and make a judgment call. And I promised myself if I was ever in a position that I was leading others, that I would not do the same thing. And I haven't. And some of the people who I am most proud of, who've grown the most in their career that I've worked with, were people who maybe wouldn't have been given a chance if I would have focused on things that weren't just the quality of their work. And so I think that was a really pivotal. It made me understand a little bit what like the servant leader concept was. Like your
Mm.
purpose is to make the person you're leading as successful as possible, regardless of what you want or what you think. And so it was. I know it sounds silly, but I was very early in my career. It was really a pivotal moment. And then the other one from a leadership perspective that jumps out is BI. This is again older. They had this great leadership development program. It was ran
Mm.
by the Centers for Creative Leadership. I still remember it. And they said essentially it was a year-long program, and we went through like every kind of assessment you could imagine. Myers Briggs, like all of them. And the amount of self awareness I learned from that program, I still use today. Like I know that I'm an extrovert, and sometimes when I'm in a meeting, I talk too much. Like I overpower others, and I still have to okay, it is important. Everybody's voices because are on the table because that's the only way we're going to get to the right decision. But if I wouldn't have had such direct feedback, direct coaching, and direct, someone putting the mirror up in front of me, I'm not sure I'd be where I was today. And so, whenever there's an opportunity for people to learn more about themselves, become more self-aware, I found that it's a gift that you can give someone that may not seem like a lot in the moment, but will last their entire career. So, I mean, I think just being able to participate in some of those things, being able to participate in the COVID launch, right now, being able to get a whole new product type out that, didn't previously exist is all those things have been really pivotal into kind of the direction of where I'm going. So,
Yeah, no, and you've got some really exciting things, like you say, to look forward to at
yeah,
Orca. So,
for sure.
um, Lauren, it's been a really good chat. I think you've been really open and honest about everything that you've implemented, the learns, the challenges, and all of that sort of stuff. So, thank you for sharing all of
Of
that.
course.
I usually end it with some quick fire questions
Okay.
to fire at you. So get ready. First question is, what are the three most important values that you live and die by?
Okay. Three most important values. So I think we've talked a little about like authenticity. I think it's important to be your authentic self in all you do. I think integrity is really important and everything that comes around that. And I'd say kindness. Being kind. That doesn't mean being a pushover, but being kind is just a really important value.
Yeah, definitely.
There
Do
you
you
go. Quick fire.
Very good. Yeah, I like it. Do you believe in leaving a legacy behind you?
I do. I don't think that legacy needs to be loud, though. I think a quiet legacy is acceptable, but
Yeah,
we all leave a legacy in the people we interact with. So I think it's important.
brilliant. Who's been the biggest inspiration in your life, either personally or professionally?
Ooh, that's tough. I've had a ton. Um, if I have to pick one person, it would probably be my mother. Like I said, she went back to school in sciences and kind of a difficult situation, not of her own doing, at 40 essentially, and decided to get a chemistry degree. And, the way she works through challenges and has really grown in her career has been an inspiration. So I would have to say
Very
my
good.
mother.
Very good. Final question. What one piece of advice would you give to future quality leaders?
One piece of advice. I would say don't lead or don't operate from a place of fear. I see the quality individuals who I don't particularly like working with are those who use regulations as a crutch and are afraid of making decisions. And that doesn't help anybody. So that
Very
would be
good.
my advice.
Thank you very much, Lauren. That's been it's been a really good conversation. Thank you so much for coming on the
All right.
show, and looking forward to seeing what you achieve over the next year or two at Orca. Really exciting time. So, best of luck with it all. Good luck with your own role and your team, and yeah, maybe we'll do another show in a year's time and see where things are at.
Sounds good. Thank you, Hamish. I hope everything goes well for you.
Thanks, Lauren. Pleasure.